Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. This is actually part 3 on this particular job site. We did a garage floor here, we did a paver driveway, some steps and stuff, and that's in the previous videos to this one. And this is all about artificial turf in this particular video. We're going to be doing a pet-friendly turf. You can see that the grass that they have in here is not doing real well, and because we do have water shortages over here, Southern California, it's a great idea to just put turf in there, something that doesn't consume water. You know, it could be, there's some other drought tolerant stuff you could do, but artificial turf requires no water other than to hose it down, especially if you have pets, because if you don't clean it occasionally, there will be an odor that emanates from it. So that's kind of important too. And in this particular case, they're going to actually, because they did have sprinkler heads in here, they're actually going to leave a couple of the perimeter sprinkler heads just to be able to turn that on, cool the turf down in the hot summer days. Also to flush it occasionally, just clean it without having to go out there. I guess you could do it remotely if you got a smart irrigation system, you know, before you get home. Fire it up, and when you get home it's fresh as a daisy. But you can hit it with some Simple Green, you know, get a pump up sprayer, spray some Simple Green out there, flush it, change your infill occasionally, things of that nature. It's just a, you know, maintenance program basically, but you know, that's yearly, so it's not too bad. Beats mowing the lawn every week. On the grade, what we're going to do here is we're just going to pick up the middle. We're going to have it kind of high in the center. That way the water just cascades off if there ever is any rain. The beauty of raising it up in the middle is that you have to dig less. You know, you have to take less dirt out because now you've raised the center. So that's another benefit of that technique. We're going to be laying some fabric down here so the weeds will prevent the weeds from coming up through the new turf. Mostly I've noticed the weeds usually just come around the edges, come up around the edges. That's where I see it usually, which makes more sense because that's where there's no turf. And you have that little gap in between where whatever it's meeting. You can see the sprinkler at the lower portion of the screen right now. That's the sprinkler that's going to stay in to be able to hose this down remotely if need be. Here's the road base going in, and there's a good 3 inches or so going in. And this is just your crushed concrete that's been recycled for this purpose. And then on top of that road base, we're going to put some fines. We're going to be using what they call a C-mix. And you can see that in the previous video also, where we mix concrete by hand and we also set the pavers in it. It's a concrete mix without the cement in it, so it's sand and rock. It's a little fine, it's fine rock. It's probably 3/8 minus mixed with sand. So that makes a nice flatter, smoother surface for the final before you drop the artificial turf on it. Otherwise, you could potentially, if you don't compact it well, if you don't get it wet enough, with just a big aggregate, crushed concrete, some rocks could be protruding into your artificial turf and it wouldn't be very comfortable to walk around on. They also make some recycled rubber mats if you really want to do a lot of activity out there. They have like some 1.5 inch, 2-inch recycled rubber you could lay underneath your turf, which makes it really nice to walk around on it, sport, whatever. Now here's some of the C-mix going in right now. Sand and rock without the cement. And then this will get compacted again. Now you can kind of see how smooth it's getting. So along the edges where the compactor's not going to get real nice and tight, you just use a hand stomper around in the tight areas. Then you can really fine tune the edge because you want it a little bit recessed so that flushes out with your artificial turf and the concrete. So when you're going around it with a hand stamper, you can really fine tune the elevation right there where it meets. So here's a roll of turf, standard size. It's 15 feet across, unlimited. I think the length is probably in a roll. I'm not sure, but I think probably up to 100 feet by 15. Here's a carpet puller or stretcher. So they've already nailed the back perimeter. That was their starting point. And now they're just kicking the carpet forward or artificial turf and nailing as they go. They're not driving these nails in all the way at that time. They're just tightening it all up. They're going to drive them, then they'll go back, drive the nails all the way down. In order to drive them all the way down, you have to pull the blades of grass back around the nail head. That way you don't mash the blades down, otherwise you'll see like little divots in the turf. Now here's the cutting process. Fold the turf back over the perimeter and then cut it from the back side. So you can see how they're holding the turf back here, holding the blades back so the nail goes down in between the blades. Now if you don't do that, those blades are stuck down forever. Now you got like divots all over the place. This is a seam because they're only 15 feet wide. And this is about 25 feet across here. So instead of cutting a straight line for the seam, they're just going to cut an irregular line here. And then they're going to match the next piece up to this line and cut it in. That way you'll never see the seam. If you have a straight line seam, there's a good chance you're going to see it. Or at least it's more obvious. But when you have something like this, more irregular, it's really hard to identify where the seam's at. And then on top of this seam where they come together, they're going to use some staples. About 2.5 inch long staples, and they'll overlap between the two pieces adjoining. On top of this seam where they come together, they're going to use some staples. They look to be a good 4 or 6 inches long, and they'll overlap between the two pieces adjoining. And when you're driving those staples, it's crucial that you drive them perfectly vertical, because if they're not, it'll actually either pull the seam apart or it'll pull it together. They're galvanized. All the nails and the staples are galvanized, so they're still going to rust, just not as quickly. And as they do rust, they actually bite into the ground. So they're really hard to pull up, in other words, once they start rusting into place. Now here's how you tuck the perimeter.
You make it look easy. Yeah, it's easy.
Oh, here's the broken water line. When they're driving the nails on the turf, they hit the sprinkler. And the water is just residual. that's in the line. It wasn't under pressure at that time. Now here's the easy way to repair these without having to dig way back on your pipe. This is your infill going in. This is just some 16 grit sand, but you can get pet friendly infill, which will kind of neutralize the odor somewhat, although it does dissolve. But this works. You can flush this, like I said, with some simple green every so often, and you'll get the same results. It's just a little more expensive, you know, to use the pet friendly infill. So this is probably your most common infill you're going to see is 16 grit sand. The pressure now on the power broom, what happened before the infill went in, which is kind of crucial, they brushed it prior to putting the sand in. They pulled the blades up with the power broom and then dropped the sand in between the blades. Now they've got the sand on there. Now they're just spreading out the sand evenly throughout the entirety of this area. Now this looks much better than it did initially, and it will always look like this without any maintenance really, other than your yearly. There it is, no seams in sight. Another beautiful artificial turf install. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you like these kind of videos, make sure you share, subscribe, hit the notification button. That way you'll be notified as soon as we upload the next video and you won't miss anything. Have a good one. Goodbye.